hormones are an expression of your inner world. You
Hmm.
can never regulate a menstrual cycle that's out of balance with a toxic chemical that's just
Exactly.
going to exacerbate the problem. You know that men go through menopause?
What?
Man, well, what's every month when we get a flu, isn't it? Isn't that the man flu?
You have to wake up. You have to get out of the matrix. You have to get educated.
You're listening to Coffee with Quacks with Ivy Lane and Chris Henderson. These are conversations with our favourite interesting quacks. Experts who threaten the mainstream narrative with their interest and skill in genuinely helping humans improve their lives in modern times. This podcast is purely for entertainment purposes only, and anything discussed should not be taken as health advice.
Welcome to Coffee with Quacks, episode 4, and we have the immense privilege to be interviewing my friend, Dr. Sherrill Sellman. Dr. Sellman is a best-selling author, psychotherapist. She hosts 2 weekly podcasts. She's a lecturer. She's also a naturopathic doctor and an energy healer practitioner. And this one's going to be awesome for me. I'm a man and I need to learn about women's hormones and things. And it's going to be very interesting. Ivy's already all over it, but we're going to cover myths and truths about hormones and aging. So very, very important topic for today's world. And I just want to go back to when I met Sherrill. I was actually doing a podcast. Actually, we were being interviewed on a summit ourselves. I was doing Light and Health, and Sherrill was coming after me, straight after me. And she was the only naturopathic doctor I've ever heard who's a woman talking about hormones and artificial blue light. She had a whole section on it. And I thought, hang on, I've got to speak to Sherrill because they don't talk about this. And she was bang on. She, you mentioned that artificial blue light after about 4 p.m. At night replicates your hormonal function at around 3-4 p.m. So we don't want that when we're going to sleep. So that was very interesting. That's how we connected. I met Sherrill in person. We've done some amazing sort of meetings together, and I'm so happy to learn from you today, Sherrill. So over to you. Maybe we start with, I know your backstory is pretty amazing. It's an A to Z of everything, really. So if you want to condense it down to something that we can fit into this podcast, that would be great to start off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here and having this conversation. And I'm honored to be considered one of your quacks. A hormone heretic is definitely in the category of a quack. And it's been special meeting you, Chris, and the connection that we had, and here we are. So I've been on a mission for a long time in the support of just people getting empowered. I would say getting empowered for your health, but the real passion was ignited around the women's health issues. So let me just say that my journey in this lifetime really began when I was about 20 years old, because I had a spontaneous peak experience, if you've heard that term before. I didn't know that term at the time. I didn't know what was happening to me, but I had an experience where all of a sudden it was like I awakened to the true reality, like God is love. I started saying a lot of God is love, which wasn't just a saying. I was in that space. And it lasted a period of time, not very long. I really have no idea, maybe a month, but it changed my life forever. Because once you experience you pierce the veil of this reality, you're never the same again. And it began a journey, not just to reconnect to that spiritual reality that I tapped into, but it also was the journey of being of service. How can I really support others on this awakening journey, which is really what our life is about. So I learned many things along the way, and I traveled a lot. I lived in different spiritual communities around the world. I was an explorer, you might say, in search of enlightenment, although I didn't really know what that meant. And it ultimately led me to the journey with women's health. and beyond, every stage of women's health. But I have to say that journey began um, really in my early 40s, because it was at that time that my health was falling apart. I was at that point in my life what our culture would consider really successful. And by that, I mean, I was working 40 hours a week as a psychotherapist. I was training people on weekends. I was doing trainings in the evenings. So you add it all up, I was maybe working 70 hours a week and, preparing. And, it was full on. And because of that drive in me to really, succeed and be successful and follow that path, which I call it that male model of going at all costs and not listening to your bodies. I started to have a range of health problems. I realized that I actually had a thyroid issue. As it turns out, it was Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I think I had that health issue most of my life because I had long periods of time with depression and weight gain, and I never understood what that was about and never therefore got treated for it. But then I also had really severe allergies. And when I say really severe allergies, like the hay fever would knock me out. I was incapacitated, fatigued, itchy eyes, throat, the whole thing. I was on my back. And I also was getting some arthritis, particularly in my hands, my fingers. So that was showing up. And then I started getting these anxiety attacks, and they came usually between 3 and 5 in the morning. And I would wake up with this severe anxiety. My mind was racing, all the fearful thoughts. And I spent a year going to different types of therapists because I figured it must be some deep hidden psychological issue. And it was when I started getting night sweats that I realized, hang on, maybe this is a whole other area I never explored, which was hormones. And that led me down the rabbit hole to women's health because I discovered that the anxiety attacks were not psychological. I would say they were related to stress and all the stress I was dealing with for many years, if not decades of my life, that it affected my adrenal glands. So the adrenals were part of that problem, and the adrenals have such an impact on insulin levels. They have an impact on your gut health. They have an impact on basically everything. And that was what I began to unravel. No one really gave me this information at the time. No one really even talked about the adrenal connection to hormonal imbalance. And because I was getting these night sweats, and mostly night sweats, I had to examine hormones because in my desire to be a super achiever, I totally ignored my own feminine nature. I didn't pay attention to my menstrual cycles, just powered on. And I had to realize that, whoa, there's something going on. And I knew nothing. I have to say, my interest in mind body psychotherapy took me to some interesting places and being able to really help people. But as far as understanding my own body, my own physiology, big mystery, never got taught it. Didn't really have any interest in understanding the feminine side of me until I was getting debilitated. And because I started to think of hormones in early 40s, maybe it's perimenopause, was a term just invented around that time. I thought, well, maybe I need some hormone replacement. So it was in that questioning state that I began to explore, should I get some hormone replacement therapy? I hear about it, what's the story with it? And I just started to innocently check it out. And boy, it's like, talk about going down the rabbit hole. I went deep down the rabbit hole on HRT and was horrified at what I was learning and outraged, I have to say. And it began this quest to really understand not only the truth about our bodies and what's happening as women, but also how we are, as I like to say, medicalized and pathologized for profit. Every aspect of women's health is medicalized and pathologized for profit, either with drugs or intervention surgeries, and with great consequences to women's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And that led me to do a lot of writing. As I investigated the hormones, I investigated birth control, I investigated hysterectomies, I investigated osteoporosis, I investigated depression, anxiety. I mean, it just one thing led to the next, which culminated in my book, Hormone Heresy, What Women Must Know About Their Hormones. And that first came out in '96 here in Australia. So I'm a resident of Australia. I've lived here for almost 40 years. And it was immediately a bestseller. It was immediately a bestseller. It was a controversial topic. I was challenging HRT, which was the darling of the medical profession for women at that time. And so it sold. So they had me on TV shows debating endocrinologists. I was in every newspaper. I was on every major radio program. It was great. I was all of a sudden, addressing thousands of people in presentations, and it was a powerful time. But I haven't stopped. I have to say that my research has continued, of course, as I go through different stages of my life and address my issues. So it's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, the whole anti-aging thing. So I keep learning and finding solutions for the issues that so many women are facing. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Just thinking, when you said your book came out in 90, where's my sound? Yes. If your book came out in 96, that would have been wonderful for me. Like, that was, my hormones were a mess. I had to learn it all since. But
Ivy, it's been has about 6 or 7 incarnations. So this was the last one that was revised and updated in 2011. I'm just about out of all the copies of that run. We'll see if I can get it. I'd like to do an updated and revised edition. So,
it would have been very challenging back then, I can imagine, because I'm just thinking about the mindset that I encountered when my mum knew that my hormones were out, and we're going to all the doctors. No, perfectly normal. Perfectly normal. I mean, I had to learn it and go through it all myself since, but gosh, it would have changed my life. My mum had have found you then.
Yeah, it was so well received, Ivy. I think that the women, we innately know that there's a wisdom within us, and we're given the chance to learn and cut through the propaganda, which I have to say surrounds every aspect of our life, as you know. I mean, there were literally, I was speaking to 5,000 women at a time, and those events were packed.
Yeah,
they were packed, and they were packed with women of all ages who were really there to learn.
Yeah,
not to attack.
And do you think that part of it, you said it's for profit? Do you think there's a bigger thing in that it's the control of women? If they take us from our innate wisdom, there's that outsourcing of our control, or our, and then we have to relearn it, and then we're a bit behind.
Whenever you're disconnected from the natural rhythms of the body, let's just say, you are vulnerable to being controlled because you're disconnected from yourself.
Absolutely, yes.
So bottom line, so when I say women are medicalized and pathologized for profit, because whenever a woman goes to her gyno, they're either going to be either going to be suggested to be on some drug or to have some intervention. But no one ever talks about, well, why is this happening? What has brought this about? What's going on in your life? What's going on in your diet? What procedures, what medications have you had, and what are some of these natural solutions that we can suggest. I mean, it's healing anything. You know, we've been taught to believe that hormones are this event that goes on. These hormones go out of balance. You get the menopause, you get the PMS, and it's totally disconnected from everything else that's going on in your life. Hormones are over here, and life is here.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, hormones are what's happening with your hormones, your feelings, your, you know, the symptoms of whatever the diagnosis is the result of how you've been living your life up to that point.
And
Bottom line.
do you think with the introduction of, you know, chemical birth controls, that, you know, because women are on these artificial cycles, that's in a way a harder for them to actually understand other things that are going on, because they're not able to go with their natural cycles and pick up that something's wrong, whereas people who are within their cycles would perhaps notice who are on a natural cycle.
Well, let's just say that's absolutely, first of all, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. So first of all, when you are taking a synthetic carcinogenic drug, which, by the way, estrogens and progestins are known human carcinogens, as listed in the, you know, World Health Organization. But they're known human carcinogens. Think about that. We're putting women. That's why there's such a worry about women being on HRT and getting breast cancer, which they are more at risk of. But then again, what's the birth control pill? The birth control pill, women don't realize that the birth control pill has higher amounts of estrogens, progestins than HRT. Think about that, right? So whenever you are commandeered, because, you know, what happens when you're on something like the birth control pill? I ask women this question: do you have a menstrual cycle when you're on the birth control pill?
Well, I know you don't.
Women, you know, every month they say, yeah, I you know, sure, I get it. No, I say you do not have a period when you're on the birth control pill. You have a forced bleed because the pill is designed to shut off your ovaries. It chemically castrates you, which is the term. And women go, oh, I didn't know that. You know, so when you are commandeering a woman's natural flow, I mean, your hormones are an expression of your inner world. You know, they are vital for you to have your emotional sensitivity, your intuition. You shut all that down when you're on the pill. You just do not feel to the depth of what's going on. You make bad choices. We now know that women on the pill, the pheromones that are emitted will create women making poor choices with partners. And I have a quote that I found from a billionaire who makes fertility drugs. And the quote is that my best customers are women in their 20s and 30s who took the pill.
Wow.
For IVF, his fertility drugs. So, yeah, you know, you put these poisons in your body and you think that that's a good thing. It can never be a good thing. It can potentially mask some symptoms of discomfort, but then you're also masking the communication your body is trying to give you that something is amiss and you need to make some changes and get some proper help. To bring wholeness back.
And then there's that whole cascade. And then I'm just thinking for women who are on birth control and then say that they did get pregnant and they've got that disconnect, then the birthing process would be a lot harder because they haven't been practiced at being in tune to themselves.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other subject, how birthing has been made into a medical procedure as opposed to a natural process. That there's so many facets about birthing that are critical to be in attunement to. And, you know, every phase of that process, it's one of the most magical journeys a being can take into this world. But the mother really has to be listening and be, you know, supporting that journey and not just getting ultrasounds of the baby, right? Which, by the way, can be as they have found a disturbance to the fetus.
Absolutely.
Can I throw a male spanner? It's not a male thing. It's something that's come to my mind when you guys talk about birth control pills. The way my mind works is it goes back to the cultural revolution of where that came from. So when it was designed, how it changed the family structure, how it changed the workplace, like the bigger. So we were sold a lifestyle, and this little thing will give you that lifestyle, right? So in the early adoption of the first generation of women taking it, yeah, I'll have that, bang. Now we see the collateral damage of that. So we're in the back end of the collateral damage. Now there's like the new dawn where women are going, hang on, what am I really taking in? But you think about like when was that, Sherrill? I don't know, was that the 50s or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, it
When
was
was
in
it designed?
Okay, so
I watched those little historical archives, and everyone's with the American music at the back, and they ding, 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 ding.
well, first of all, when the pill first came out, they really, in actual fact, didn't do any studies on the safety of the pill.
That's how unusual.
So we have a pattern here. So in the 1960s, when it came out, all excited about this new potential for women, and so it was supposed to be given between pregnancies to women initially, by the way. And anyway, so these women were all excited, started taking the pill, and then they started dropping dead of heart attacks and strokes.
What? I didn't know that.
Yes. So now they weren't into class action suits in the 1960s. So what the drug companies did, they went, oops. Let's go back to the drawing board. So they created the low dose pill. Hear those terms? Low dose pill. Everyone goes, oh, low dose pill. Doesn't that sound lovely? Low dose pill means lower than the high doses that were killing women of blood clots and strokes. But the low dose pill is still much more potent of these two carcinogenic drugs that women are now taking that also have the capacity to create blood clots and strokes, but a whole lot more, because there are 120 risks and side effects associated with the pill. Now, no woman is ever going to get this from their gyno. You're never going to hear this from a doctor, but it depletes vitamin C, vitamin E, magnesium, zinc, selenium. It alters your gut microbiome. It just is devastating. 120 possible risks and side effects from taking the low dose pill, which is only lower than the high dose that was killing women.
Interesting.
And then if we want to go to the story, because as I say, history is written by the winners. So the next part of the story is, so they found these hormones and they go, oh my God, what else can we do with them? Whoa, well, why don't we promote them to women for menopause? So suddenly the next thing that came down the track in about 66 or so was, first of all, a book called Feminine Forever, written by a top gynecologist, American gynecologist, who said that the problem with women at menopause is an estrogen deficiency, and it makes them caricatures of their former selves.
Wow.
Other disparaging comments to make. And like menopause is this downhill slide, and you lose your libido, your beauty, everything. And if you want to stay young and juicy, then this is the miracle for you. So it was called estrogen replacement therapy. Before your time, Ivy, estrogen replacement therapy. And the book was a bestseller, and women were just knocking down the doors. And that lasted maybe 10 years, because at the end of 10 years, there was an 800% increase in hysterectomies and ovarian cancer, uterine cancer, rather.
Wow.
Because estrogen causes cancer.
Yeah.
And they were given in very high doses, just estrogen by itself, which should never be given by itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the drug companies go, oh, God, yeah, we messed up again. So sorry. And they went back to the drawing board and go, oh yeah, right. We should never give estrogen by itself. Like in the body, it's always with progesterone. And so we will create a synthetic form of progestin. We'll add it to estrogen and we'll reintroduce it back to the market maybe in the 1970s it was, maybe, I can't remember, maybe 1970s, maybe 80s. But, you know, women still remembered that their friends and mothers were dying of uterine cancer or getting hysterectomies. Trending was hysterectomies and surgery. So they weren't really interested. So how do you get women? How do you get women to go back on to carcinogenic drugs? They created a new disease. And you know what that disease was?
No.
Osteoporosis.
Oh, right.
They created this new disease called osteoporosis, and I have the ads in my slide presentations that I used to do. I have the ads, and in this ad that they would put into magazines and everywhere, it said, give her one of these, and you won't have to give her two of these. Give her one pill, and you won't have to give her two crutches.
Who were they talking to? Doctors or husbands or?
Women. Well, probably everybody. So it was so all of a sudden they were creating this new condition, this new scare factor that your bones are going to fall apart and you're going to be on crutches in a wheelchair. And so that was the pharmaceutical industry did this whole marketing campaign, and then two other industries piggybacked on the way to stop osteoporosis. You know what those two industries were?
Dairy.
Drink your milk for calcium. Yeah. And it was calcium supplementation and dairy. The dairy industry got into it and the calcium industry got into it, none of which have anything to do with, in fact, osteoporosis is a created condition, and not that we, when we're out of balance, have the potential of this imbalance to show up in various ways, but bones aren't about calcium.
They're like vitamin D and boron and all that.
Right? They're protein, they're essential fatty acids, they're 18 different bone building nutrients. If you're having, and I did a lot of research on this and interviewed one of the experts, Dr. Susan Brown, who did all this research into the story with bones. And you can lose up to half of your bone density and never be at risk of fracture. So there's a big story here. But if we're just going to stay on this for a moment, they had a solution for women, aside from HRT. Because another drug came down the pike. It's called, one of the terms in the US was Fosamax. You've got it here. I'm not sure what name it's under, but it's under a classification called bisphosphonates. Whatever the prescribed drug is for osteoporosis, it's a variation of bisphosphonates. It could be a weekly, it could be a shot, it could be monthly. They've created all sorts of variations on the theme. And what does this bisphosphonate drug do for osteoporosis? Nothing. What it does do, it's designed to, bone is tissue. And I mean, Chris, you know this, any living tissue, it grows and then it dies. And there's a cycle, bring in new tissue and the old tissue is really cleared out. So in bones, we have two cycles. We build new bone cells, are produced, and the old dead and dying cells are cleared out. Well, with these bisphosphonate drugs, it stops that remodeling. They call it remodeling cycle. So what that means is that stops the old dead and dying cells to leave. Well, if you don't create space because the old ones are going, how do the new ones get in?
It become more affected by osteoporosis. Well,
increased risk of fracture. Anyone on those drugs are at increased risk of fracture. It destroys your bone health. It's a poison to the bones.
Because it would make it really brittle.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And not only that, it destroys bone in other places of the body. Let's talk about jawbones. Talk about your teeth. Jawbones. Jawbones become necrotic. I meet these people. I was going around the country in the US for a while, talking about osteoporosis, I meet these people who their jaw, they were doing jawbone replacement because the jawbone became necrotic, killed the bone.
Wow.
Do you know what's do you know what? In relation to like going, I always try and look at the bigger picture of why would we get sucked into that belief? Obviously, you've got your MD who's, liaised and wined and dined by drug reps, and they take on those products, and you trust him. And yes, this is good for your family, but just the mass media. And I know, especially America, when I visited America when I was emigrating to Australia and I was 10 years old, I couldn't believe all these advertisements, like these lifestyle advertisements for drugs. You don't have it here in Australia. And
Well,
then, just recently gone by, when they're trying to encourage people to take certain drug interventions for what's just happened, they started to like use this American model of incentivization. I'm like, I'm not used to this, but
Yeah.
obviously Americans are used to getting that programming.
I think like
Literally.
90. It's about not. I would say it's about 90% of all advertising, which lasts maybe 10 minutes every segment. Has to do with drugs of some sort. It's but here's the bigger story that I really like to focus on, the bigger journey, because what I wrote about in the book, and I've talked to different people, religious people, just people looking at the bigger story, because the story is that we as women have been disconnected from our wisdom and from our own I call menstrual wisdom. We've been disconnected. That's a fact. You can, a lot of reasons. We live in a patriarchal culture, 5,000 years. I mean, the stories that I could tell you what I learned of what went on and how women were experimented upon and abused, and, all the way down to Hippocrates that, believed that women were inferior, had inferior brains. My favorite quote from Hippocrates is he said rhetorically, "What is women? What is women? What is woman?" I think, and what his answer was?
What?
Disease.
Was he married? Did he have a partner, or what was his story?
So you have to understand that we have been in the matrix around our own power as women, and understanding ourselves. We've been disconnected. So really, the driving passion behind me is not just getting these. It's like shock treatment, right? Getting this message out, but it's really to get women to reclaim their power and their wise women nature, their menstrual wisdom, and to reclaim the beauty and power that comes from their bodies and these natural cycles, and the healing that comes when we reconnect with our natural cycles. Because everything in our culture up to this point has been to disconnect us from our bodies and from the wisdom.
Yeah. Right? There must be something really powerful that they need to unplug from, because once you reconnect, then everything comes back.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah. The irony, or perhaps it wasn't ironic, maybe it was, as I say, like they planned it. When we are in our true power, we support men so much better. We can support men to be in their power when we are in our natural power. And I know because my cycle is aligned with the moon now, and it's been now for a good year exactly, and the power that I feel is so much more, even if it's got a regular cycle other times, when I am in align with the natural cycles of the moon. And I speak to other women who are the same, that when they are in that cycle, it's like you're amplified. Everything is amplified.
So let's talk about, what does it mean to be in your power? What does that mean, to be in your power? There are a lot of women in power who are worse than men. I've had women tell me they've gone to women gynecologists who were more abusive to them than any male doctor ever was. So what does being in your power really mean? So for me, when I started to do all this, like lifting the veil of this whole story, the whole huge story, and I was in my 40s, I started to pay attention to my cycles. You're talking, Ivy. I was paying attention to my menstrual, we call it menstrual wisdom, right? and I was following my cycles. I never paid attention, by the way, up until that point, to anything to do with my menstrual cycles. It was, basically, good inconvenience at times, painful at other times, but I just didn't pay any attention to what it really offered me. And, someone who's gone through many years not feeling not good enough and, struggling with my own self-esteem and all that stuff. So when I was in my 40s and I started later on in my 40s, and I started to learn about this. So I had a chart, and I would, a wall chart, and I would chart the day and cycle and the emotion and libido. And I started to pay attention. You do the whole thing. You pay attention to your bleeding, and you pay attention to, your cervical mucus. I mean, you start tuning in, right? Start tuning in. And the more I did that, the more I tuned into myself, my hormones, the rhythms, the more I felt a connection to my inner authority.
Yeah.
The more I felt more attuned with myself, more confident in myself, more intuitive with what was going on, paying attention to the dreams and the information that the dreams give you, especially when you're, in your menstruating time or right before that time. It was attuning me to myself. That is the power we're talking about.
Absolutely.
We're not talking about overpowering someone or being an Amazon. We're not talking about that. We're talking about being able to be so finely attuned with yourself, which is what these cycles are offering us, that we step into a greater knowingness. We step into a greater connection with our sense of well-being, with our inner authenticity, I would call it.
Absolutely.
That's what I felt I was connecting with more. And all those years of struggling and not feeling good enough and insecure, they transformed. So this is what true empowerment means. And reconnecting with our menstrual wisdom is critical. You can't really have it if you don't.
No, I would agree. And it's like the power of femininity is the depth and the complexity and the intuition and the nurturance and all of that we do. What I find is when I have to step out of that and play a masculine role, I lose that depth. So I totally agree with everything you're saying, that coming back and being so in tune gives us, it's like a big cushioning for people around us, because if we are all of this, then, we can provide more support for other people. We can intuitively know what other people need. We can, and then everyone around us benefits. Whereas if we've got no control over it, or we don't understand it, we don't know why we're feeling this way, or blah, blah, blah.
And it is the pathway to your spiritual essence.
Yes. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
So that's why it's so profound, because if we are really seeking our spiritual awakening and reconnecting to this greater oneness of life, which is where all healing comes from anyway, when we make that connection and find more peace within ourselves. Think about it. How do you do it if your hormones are shut down, commandeered by foreign carcinogenic drugs, or if you are, in chronic pain, endometriosis, PMS, because of unresolved abuse, because of toxic food, toxic chemicals? There's infinite reasons why our hormones get out of balance physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So ultimately, the healing of our hormonal imbalance, however it may show up, is the path to transformation.
Yes.
Amazing. I was just thinking, I'll just bring out what's coming to my mind. So in the functional medicine space, and Ivy's part of that too, we do sort of, urine hormone panels. We do chemical testing. Just thinking in our modern day, I'm currently doing a project where we're doing urine chemical panels on people. And, you mentioned estrogen as a therapy. now we have what's called like xenoestrogens, right? Like chemical compounds that are everywhere that mimic estrogen, and that's affecting both male and female. Could you go into the xenoestrogen deal? Because I think that might be an interesting topic.
Yeah, by the way, before I go there, I was just reading today. I think you're going to hear a lot more about this. Chris, do you know that men go through menopause?
I know. Well, that's every month when you get a flu, isn't it? Isn't that the man flu? No.
I'm going to tell you, you're going to be hearing about male menopause.
So just taking that fact and dragging it back, is this just a rerun of what they did with women to feed us into some drug cycle? Okay.
Yeah, because, can I just stay on this for a minute and then we'll talk about the xenoestrogens thing? Because look, if you think the pharmaceutical industry is really there to solve some serious problems, that's not really its modus operandi.
Because they're there to find new markets.
It's there to create problems. So then they can create it, none of these drugs like HRT, the bisphosphonates, were they ever studied for health and well-being? Then they were starting to promote HRT for women, protect their heart, by the way. And the interesting thing about that study, it was all done on men.
Repurposing of meds is the main thing.
Yeah, because women had too many variables they couldn't control. So they had to do the study of whether HRT is beneficial for women on men. Does that make sense to anybody listening?
Yeah.
But anyway, what I just read today that just said, oh God, here we go again. Yeah. So when men have, when they get into their 50s, 60s, maybe earlier, they have the low T, and that's what they call, and they lose the mojo and everything else. Well, yeah, that's probably true, but what does that mean?
Yeah, why?
Is testosterone the answer? No. Are you burnt out? Are you eating the wrong food? The natural cycle of life this is a fact. The natural nature of who we are and how we are, the older we get, the less efficient we are. Yes, there are hormonal changes in men. Yes, there are hormonal changes in women, but there are natural ways to support the body's ability to optimize these functions. Now, you can do it in lots of ways. Obviously, there's nutritionals and there's lifestyle factors. Something I've been using for 40 years is working with my Chinese herbalist and getting customized Chinese formulas based on my tongue diagnosis. So he goes inside my body through the tongue. I don't mean literally, figuratively. Yeah. But tongue in traditional Chinese medicine, they understand the aging process. They understand patterns of imbalance. They understand how organs can get compromised from life and seasons and whatever else, and then they have developed formulas that rejuvenate not only these patterns of imbalance, but they can rejuvenate the essences that get depleted as we get older. Okay, so what is the big message here is you've got to appreciate that there are ways to optimize the functioning of your body. And to the degree you abuse it with alcohol and carbs and sugar and toxins, yeah, you're going to get seriously hormonally out of balance. And if you do nothing and just continue on the way you were partying when you were 20, when you're 60, how can the body ever thrive? Mm-hmm. And reach the potential to have optimal health? The fact of the matter is that my health is better now than I was in my 40s. And I'm not telling you my age, but I will tell you I'm beyond 40. My health
is better now than when I was in my 20s, and I'm in my 40s. Yeah.
So we can get younger and healthier as we get older, but you have to understand, you have to get educated, you have to invest in whatever it takes to bring greater harmony and balance and support to your physical, emotional, and mental and spiritual self. That's just the way it is. And there's no HRT, there is no birth control pill, there is no bisphosphonate drug that can do that for you, because they all have serious side effects.
You have to work with someone, right? Like a proper someone who understands coaching, like metabolic types, testing, diet. I mean, the way I'm seeing it is both ends of the scale. The reason I brought up the xenoestrogen issue is you look at things like, is it atrazine? So that changes the male, like the frogs from female to male. I mean, just imagine, you talk about all those drugs. Those drugs are now in the water supply that are getting repurposed and we're drinking, especially in the States, right? Like there's residues of decades of drugs. I mean, how is this affecting young people, and how is this affecting? Like for me, when you look at what's going on today, when you have this, people don't know their gender identity. They don't know if they're male. They don't know if they're female. They don't know. I don't believe that this is by design. Like, as there's something going on. We're like maxed out with our exposure with all this stuff, and we wouldn't have a clue about it. So I'm really passionate about bringing that to a point where it's not one's fault going, oh, I don't know what I am. It's like your hormones are confused, and it's the inputs, that's happening.
Well, the fact of the matter is, Chris, I wrote about that over 20 years ago. And 20 more years ago, they saw that fish were becoming hermaphroditic when they were exposed to chemicals in the rivers and animals. And, they saw male fish turn into females and having eggs. I mean, they saw this happening. These are estrogen-like chemicals in the body when it's exposed, or when any animal or being is exposed to these hormone-like substances that get into their bodies. They are processed as hormones, and but it creates an excessive amount, and the liver, which should be metabolizing these hormones safely out of the body, can't do it because the liver's overwhelmed, or the liver's toxic, or you got problems with your gallbladder if you even have one. The whole detoxification pathway is impaired. And by the way, HRT acts as an antibiotic in the body, and your estrogen is made in your gut. It starts in your gut where this estrogen is produced. So if your gut is a mess, you're not going to be able to produce the hormone estrogen that gets circulated back into the body and, is part of the cycle. That people don't know that the gut is a major player with your estrogen levels. Yes, and so are your ovaries and other parts of your body, but we start messing things up. So when we put these artificial hormones into the water supply, or into our food, or into our personal care products, now the body is overloaded with these hormonal signalings that, of course, it's going to cause havoc in the body.
Yeah.
And will it cause havoc in future generations? Well, I wrote a sequel to Hormone Heresy called Mothers Protect Your Daughters from Breast Cancer, because when I was traveling around Australia lecturing based on Hormone Heresy, all these people would come up to me, and they would come up to me and they had like 10-year-old daughters that are menstruating, or transgender people telling me, their stories and what happened. Their mother took, this hormone when they were pregnant. And what these people were telling me was that they were born with female chromosomes, but were manifesting as males because they were so hormonally dysregulated, or they had all this, their genitalia was deformed. And I was meeting these people who were telling me, and I always asked them, what do you think happened? Well, my mother had early exposure to the pill, or I was exposed to this chemical, or I took the pill. There were all these stories. And, the average age of menstruating, at least when I was doing the initial research, it may be lower now, is like 10.9 years in girls.
Wow.
Which may not sound
Really
shocking
young.
to modern people, but the average age that it should be in traditional cultures is between 16 and 17.
Which makes sense, because that's when you're mature enough to at least, somewhat mature enough to at least understand and to care. And So do you think the lighting, as Chris was saying about lighting, do you think the artificial lighting and the screens that kids are on now, that high exposure, do you think that affects puberty?
I think everything that is out of balance with nature is affecting puberty.
Yeah.
I don't have any evidence to say that for sure, but we know that if you are spending more time indoor with blue light, it's affecting your thyroid, it's affecting your hypothalamus, it's affecting your gut microbiome. You can't produce melatonin in the morning when it's released at night, so you can't sleep, you have insomnia. I mean, anything that's going to impair the body from being functioning optimally as we were designed is going to have ramifications. Our synthetic artificial indoor world filled with chemicals and fragrances and preservatives is no surprise why we're here dealing with what we're dealing with. And that's why it's a big wake-up call. You can't drug yourself, you can't hormone replacement yourself, whether it's bioidentical hormones or HRT, not a whole lot of difference in my book, to get out of hormonal imbalances. Menopause doesn't need to be a decline, a time of decrepitude, as the doctor said in the book that was written in 1966. Doesn't have to be it's not a time of decrepitude. I mean, if anything, I provide the evidence in my presentations that menopause, as an example, we haven't touched on that subject yet, is a time of great empowerment. The corpus callosum gets wider and bigger, and we get better access between our left and right brains. We're more intuitive, we're more intelligent. Your body has a backup system to produce hormones. You don't totally run out of estrogen in your ovaries, as we are told that they dry up and are useless. No, that's not true at all. We don't have to suffer as we go through these phases, but we do have to wake up.
I think it would be, imagine now that you've said that, it makes sense. As I tell women, PMS and painful periods and all of that is not normal. It might be common, but it's not normal. You don't have to go through that pain, that discomfort, that excessive mood and emotional shift. You don't have to. In fact, you shouldn't be. And if you are, and so of course that literally only clicked with me just then, that would be the same for menopause. And if you're going through it as you're meant to, naturally supported, then yeah, it actually.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, Ivy. It's like what's common is not normal.
Yeah.
Not the way nature intended. We should be transitioning through all these phases of life symptom-free.
Yeah.
But it's not common anymore because we're so toxic, we're so depleted, we're so stressed. Just so many things that have impacted us in our culture and the choices we've made. So anything can be healed. I mean, the good news is that, first of all, you have to get educated. You have to wake up. You have to really reclaim the wisdom of your body and the wisdom of menstrual cycles. I didn't know any of this. No one taught me this. I had to do the research on my own, right? I just became voraciously researching and having aha moments all the time when I was doing this. And it definitely was a driving passion for me. And, the clarion call to women to wake up, get healthy, live your life in a greater balance. So, it's more important than ever before, because if we're talking about the awakening of the feminine, which is this era we're going into, and I did interview people about that, the age of the feminine. That's what this is considered to be this time. You can't move into the age of the feminine and feminine wisdom if you're hooked into drugs that shut down your innate source of wisdom, which comes from in menstruating women, their menstrual women, their menstrual cycles, and in menopause, postmenopause. It's just the innate wisdom you've gathered in life and the changes that go on in your body that give you greater access to your intuition and spiritual connection. That's how we restore the feminine into the world.
which is it seems daunting for a lot of women. I find that I think people have a concept that hormones are they're like a mystery. And yet I find, once you start tapping in and you understand just simple things, it becomes less so, and you get that innate wisdom. But can you sort of share some access to that for women out there who do feel that they know their hormones are out, but they have no idea on where to begin or what that means?
Well, so let's start with sugar. Eliminate sugar out of your diet. Now, you don't have to eliminate sweet things. I have, there are healthy sweeteners out there, but women who find that they have to have their cakes and their sweets and their, just their candy bar every afternoon, or their drink, or their sodas, or what you have to stop the sugar, because when I was going into menopause and I started getting hot flashes, I only got them if I had chocolate cake or like wine at night, because it stimulates your insulin levels, which dysregulate your whole system. I saw that. I mean, I immediately went into a hot flash after I had wine or sugar, chocolate cake. Other than that, no, I wouldn't. It's not a normal thing. It's a dysregulation. It's not normal. If you were normal, you would transition symptom free. So you got to change your diet. We can always start there. Well, that's a place to start. You're going to have to do it sooner or later if you want your hormones in balance anyway. You have to have healthy fats. You have to have, personally, you have to have adequate protein, because your hormones are made from protein. So I don't care where you get your protein from, but you need to get adequate protein into your diet. And you want to alkaline your body. So, a toxic body cannot get in balance. So more greens, or take bicarbonate soda, or, there are products out there that can alkaline. That's pretty fundamental to the process of bringing your body back into harmony. Make sure you stay hydrated. Alcohol is not your friend. It will never be your friend. I'd rather have women take medicinal cannabis, or edibles, or whatever they want, because it stimulates the endocannabinoid system, than alcohol, if you want to get a lift, right? You know what I mean? And then got to meditate. So you can't get hormonally balanced if your mind is racing, usually with negative thoughts, fearful thoughts, 24/7. So you have to learn to calm down, meditate, whatever that means. There's infinite numbers. Start with the breath. Which was, my go-to. It still is. Go to the breath. Just slow your breath, deep, full diaphragmatic breathing. Plenty of apps to do that. I mean, it's easy to do these days. You've got to exercise, and you have to get into nature. And Chris will really appreciate this, right? You got to watch the sunrise. That sets all your hormonal clocks into play. You've got to get out barefoot, into the earth, into the sand. You've got to connect with nature. You've got to get as much natural light as you can. That's another critical piece that I've incorporated. I'm privileged. I get to look out my window right here, and I can sit in my lounge suite with my, windows open, my doors open, and sit there and watch the sunrise. Comfort of my own home.
We're going to do an interview we'll probably interview each other, but the sleep factor is massive, because if you think about all of the artificial light, the Wi-Fi, the electromagnetics you're exposed to beyond, say, 8 p.m., just driving the cortisol up. Once that cortisol is driving up, we know that it's cortisol dominant, which means that all the other hormones, all of the resources, all the diet and the fat and all the resources and the minerals you've taken, all going to get driven into cortisol. So your environment is as important as your food, in my opinion.
So absolutely, and we both are fans of Dr. Jack Kruse. He goes, the light environment is more important than any diet you eat. So, I think they're all important, but adding the light, spending time, grounding with nature, watching the sunrise, and literally watching the sunrise is the most profound thing we could be doing, because when we watch the sunrise, this information, all the spectrums of light that actually are communications through our eyes into our brain is activating all these natural rhythms to like get into proper harmony. That was a revelation for me. And Chris, you're into that as well, and we understand. And if you're asking for another piece is protecting yourself from exposure to EMFs.
Yeah.
So all the Wi-Fi devices I've written a lot about it. I mean, they stimulate the adrenal glands, they compromise your thyroid, they raise insulin levels, they affect your brain, they will alter your gut microbiome. So our wireless world is, to be honest, without finding effective protection from the exposure of these frequencies, it makes all toxins more toxic. Toxic exposure is more toxic from EMFs.
We're interviewing Sherrill, our EMF expert, on Wednesday as part of the podcast. So sort of perfect timing. Just when you said, I always pull research down on artificial blue light, and I just pulled some PubMed studies down showing that even if you put nothing in your mouth, if you're exposed to artificial blue light at night, your insulin goes up.
Really?
Well, you'll be happy to know, Chris, I have these wonderful bulbs that with one of the companies you're involved with that have the twilight frequency, the orange light. And I have this little portable lamp that I keep on my bedside that I read with, that, is like that at nighttime light, not the red, but it's the orange, so I can read, but, and I don't put any lights on at night. I don't put any of the LED lights on. I don't use them at all, except when I'm doing these podcasts. But other than that, I don't use any of the LED lights, the white frequencies, the blue light frequencies. So, that's I've learned that over the years, and you've helped with that as well.
People should really start a diet. Sorry, Ivy. People, it's easy to start with diet, isn't it? Because there's other stuff. People can't really. It's the back end where they go, oh, well, I need that extra. The environmental stuff usually comes last and the diet comes first. We're trying to sort of balance that out and show people how it's just as important as each other, like you said. But I think, like reiterating what Ivy said, it seems to be designed that way because it is. This modern world is designed where we have no perception of what's damaging us whatsoever.
That's reality.
It's like the Matrix.
I just want to say, what I'm sharing with you has taken me 30 more years to put together. So this is a lifetime of, serious path I've gone down. So I say that because I don't want to. Well, I say that for two reasons. Number one, I don't really want people to feel overwhelmed. I just want people to start somewhere, because somewhere will lead you everywhere.
Absolutely.
And I also encourage people listening, men, women, you have to wake up. You have to get out of the matrix. You have to get educated. You have to start reading. You have to start listening to podcasts. You have to begin the journey of understanding the way to get yourself back into balance. And if hormones are your thing, then you begin the journey of learning about your body, honoring your hormones, your menstrual cycle. If you are still menstruating, how wonderful is that? Learn about how to get in tune with your monthly flow and how it affects you emotionally, physically, sexually. Start paying attention. And that is a revelation right there, right? Mm-hmm. So all of those things, it doesn't matter where you insert the process of change or learning, but you have to insert it somewhere. You have to wake up and change one little thing. I always tell, my clients, my patients, look, we're not going to throw the book at you. Start with one little thing, because I can tell you one little thing will begin the journey to more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. So, gluten's my thing for people. If you can just cut out gluten and just listen to how you feel. Can I just want to ask one thing about, you say, this is all about women, but all of those things I'm thinking in my head are exactly the same things that men need to do to get back into their proper levels of, of testosterone and your other hormones. And even though you're specifically talking about women, but it's all of those things apply to men as well, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Because remember, we're saying your hormones are not separate from how well your whole body is working, how well your adrenals, your liver, your stomach, your kidneys, your spleen, it's all connected. The thing about women is that we have more of these hormonal fluctuations because we're women and we have a menstrual cycle. And so in some ways, we're more vulnerable to changes that happen than men are, to be honest. But if men, if human beings are not eating the foods that nature provided us, if human beings are not connecting back into nature and spending time in nature, if human beings aren't doing those things, it's going to show up in some way or other. And in women, they're very vulnerable with their hormones.
Yes. And I just thinking about there seems to be a large section of younger men who are getting fatigued at younger and younger ages because they're still doing these high level workloads and high pressure stuff with all of this nutrient and all the rest of the onslaughts and stuff. And it's something that I've noticed, men in their 30s are struggling with the vitality that they probably should have at that age. And it's something I often think about, like it's got to be very disheartening.
I think everybody, Ivy, is struggling.
Yes, absolutely.
I think everybody is struggling. So, for a lot of the reasons we talked about today. But, the most important message that I really want women to understand is that, all hormonal balance is a symptom of imbalance of some area of their life that they have to begin the journey to address and heal. And we're not meant to suffer with our hormones. We're not meant to suffer with PMS. Every endometriosis can be healed. You don't have to suffer going through menopause. And part of that journey is with conversations like we're having today, because we have to heal the means. We have to heal the programmings that have been put into our heads by the media, like menopause is a downhill slide. When I last time I was in the States, I was watching television. I don't even have a television. I haven't had a television for 20 years or more. But I was watching the commercials. Just talk about the aging thing. I mean, there were commercials for diapers. There were commercials for hearing aids. There were commercials for eye medicine for cataracts and glaucoma. And I mean, it goes on and on. What are these? These are memes. These are direct commands that are telling us you're going to age and your eyesight's going to suffer. You're going to be incontinent. You're going to be weak. You're going to have, blah, blah, blah. That's a programming. And we get it here in Australia, you get it everywhere. So we have to pay attention to that and refuse to accept those memes.
And that's where people go, I'm just getting old.
Yeah, and
getting old. Well, you don't have to get old like that.
So let me just say, when you are healthy, this is my take. This is my experience. Because I don't have any aches and pains, I don't have any issues. I've spent most of my life committed to my health.
Yeah.
But you feel ageless, right? You feel ageless. You only feel old when you have pain in your body. So you can feel old when you're 40, and I've heard 40-year-olds who have pain say that, right? So you can, whenever you are in pain and achiness and you've got issues, then you go, I feel old. I don't have the energy. Can't think. Yeah, because you're not functioning on all 8 cylinders. And if you are healthy, you feel ageless, whatever your age is.
Yes.
There are a lot of old 30-year-olds and there are a lot of young 80-year-olds.
True. And it's that disempowering. If it's just because you're getting old, then it's that self-defeating or self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. I'm never going to get better because I can't stop the aging process, so I may as well just accept it and fold on in, which is very saddening.
False belief.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've worked with people who, they get into their late 70s, 80s, and they're not feeling well. It's like, well, yeah, you've spent a lot of years abusing your body, but the body has an immense capacity to rejuvenate and regenerate if you just, get with the program
The right
and
program.
the right program. And they've had amazing reversal.
Hmm. That's exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Cheryl, you've got a couple of really awesome things to share with us. I think we were talking at the start of the show about these amazing products that you've helped develop and found, and it speaks to, actually it's quite emotional, because when you go into that depth of how they created those estrogen birth control pills back in the 50s, and now what you've developed and found, and you have a solution, it's like, wow, like super powerful. So can you share with what you spoke to Ivy and us about before we started?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. The birth control thing is a big story, right? Because yes, women want to be able to control their fertility and their pregnancies and all that stuff. And what used to be there was it's kind of taken away, because I remember the cervical cap was really popular at one time, which you can hardly find. I don't know where you would ever get fitted for a cervical cap anymore.
Very small numbers of doctors can do it. Very small.
So you'd probably know that. So yeah, so that's, so it doesn't leave women with a lot of options. I mean, they use a Mirena coil, but the Mirena is inserted with progestin. Remember, progestin's a known human carcinogen, and any woman who's been on a progestin that I've talked to with that Mirena coil have been depressed. They may have heavy bleeds, painful bleeds. They just feel terrible. And that's, what other options are there right now, right? Well, there is another option. So in my quest to find solutions, I came across a woman named Dr. Ferron, who's a French woman and biochemist, worked at Harvard, really smart woman. And she was visiting a friend in France, I believe, and the daughter had been diagnosed with a blood clot from the pill. So this inspired Dr. Ferron to look for an alternative, which I think is more available in Europe than in Australia and the US. Anyway, what she created was a product, and she calls it, I got some here, called Smart Women's Choice. So Smart Women's Choice is a product that is based on a very simple and brilliant concept. She has these natural oils in this, that's made in this product. There's a variety of oils that she's formulated, all natural, non-hormonal, and here's how it works. When you insert this before intercourse, and like this one little thing is good for 50 sex, times of sex, right? But the point is, when you use this product, it actually traps the sperm, because to conceive, the sperm have to make this long journey, in sperm's terms, up the fallopian tube. I think Dr. Ferron said it's equivalent to like traveling halfway around the world. So they have to make this long journey. But if you trap them, if like they get stuck and they can't move, which on the website you can see in recording, they videotape the process of what happens to these sperm when they're in this mixture. They get trapped and they stop. They can't make it up the fallopian tube. That's it. That's it. End of risk. Right? Understand? So this is an amazing product, and probably more than 10,000 women now have used this without any pregnancies, and it's non-toxic, non-hormonal. It's effective. They've been doing research with this out of Israel, and they found it to be absolutely viable as an effective contraceptive. And voila, that's your solution for a natural, healthy contraceptive. I do have some of this product in Australia. If anyone's listening from the US, you can go directly to the company and order it. But if people contact me, I do have some here, and it's really inexpensive. The other product that, in my experience of working with women, that I saw as a huge issue based on again, these imbalances and the stress and the depletion of our life force, is vaginal dryness. Now, you may think vaginal dryness is a problem for menopausal women, which it is. But the fact of the matter is that women in their 40s and 50s are dealing with vaginal dryness. And it makes sex really painful. But not only that, I mean, it's a condition that can lead to other problems, because if you don't have the right mucosal protection in the vagina, then you're vulnerable to UTIs and to viruses and candida. And if that vaginal tissue starts to tear, you can have inflammation go on, and it alters your gut microbiome. I mean, I've gotten into this side, been fascinated with the whole vaginal dryness thing. So I was given the opportunity to put together my dream product. Someone said to me, a manufacturer, if you could make your dream product, what would be in it? And I rattled off these ingredients like hyaluronic acid and vitamin E and this herb called Prayer Mirifica, which has estrogen-like properties but doesn't stimulate the estrogen receptors. There's a nano silver product that I've been writing and I love for years that can safely kill all viruses and mold and bacteria, but doesn't alter the microbiome. So, aloe vera. So there are about 6-7 ingredients. And they created it. This company created it. It's called Hygiena, and it's a suppository, and it bathes the tissues with all these natural, organic, very powerful healing substances that restores the health of the vaginal environment. Restores the health of your gut microbiome, heals the tissues, heals any infections, and creates that elasticity of those tissues again. That's pretty awesome, right? Because the only other option women are given is estrogen to do that. Or there are other products out there, but they don't have there are other natural products out there, but they don't have the comprehensive formula that this one does.
Yeah. But that's like healing. That's sort of balancing the whole situation rather than just acting one part.
And I have to say, that's a topical way to address the problem. And it's been incredibly successful for women who really suffered with this. But you have to address it internally.
Yes.
As well. There are fats that help. Well, personally, I work with women with Chinese herbs because it's the drying up of your essences that affect those tissues. So I like to work with Chinese herbal customized tinctures with women. But there's royal jelly. That's another thing that's really good. It's the kidney energy that gets depleted and dries out. So you have to make the changes. Alcohol and coffee and carbs and sugar will dry out these essences. Will just deplete. Will put you out of balance. And don't want to get into the TCM model too much, but basically you have to restore your functions. So I like to combine this with making the changes so you can replenish those tissues from within. But meanwhile, this is like immediate results of being able to heal those tissues that have been dried out, and lesions, and an unhealthy environment in vaginal vault.
Which should then be one of those, let's get started somewhere, and then the flow-on effects. And if you're able to give people back something enjoyable in their life that they haven't been able to enjoy, that'll be causing relationship problems and shame and guilt and fear and all the rest of it. That's a wonderful gift to give people.
Well, it's huge for relationships, because I'm going to tell you, there's nothing more painful than having vaginal dryness and trying to have sex. Like someone having sandpaper inside you. So, by the way, I do have a few of these containers. Otherwise, they have to be shipped from the U.S. So I'd like to keep a little supply available for all my Aussie friends.
So do you have that? So they're available on your website, but only for US?
Yes. Well, I would rather have people contact me directly, and we can give them my email address, because then, there's special rates for people in Australia. Basically why I'm suggesting that, not through my website right now.
So can you share those, Cheryl? How can people contact you?
Yeah,
Yes.
first of all, I encourage people to go to my website, which is drsherrillsellman.com, drsherrillsellman.com. We'll probably put it up somewhere in the notes.
Yeah, we'll have it underneath. Yeah.
Yeah, and then email me at drsherrillsellman.com for sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
And are you?
I'm happy to support people and answer emails and assist in whatever way I can. If people, I'm happy to do like a free 30-minute consultation if people just need some guidance. I'm really here to support women.
Yep. So you're still coaching, like you're doing that.
I do, yes, I do
Yeah.
some. It's not my main gig these days. I most of it is virtual consulting. I'm doing a lot of writing, to be honest, but I do some consulting for sure.
I mean, if I'd like, yeah. I mean, I think I read your book. I actually did read your book, so getting your book would be just an important starting point. So
Well,
that
it's
would
like
be
first come, first serve because I literally only have about 6 copies in publication. I just checked. That's it. And then that book is out of print.
Do you have you convert to like a PDF version or maybe an Audible is the next thing, right?
Yes, maybe an Audible is the next thing. I don't really want it to go out of print, but I do want to update it because there's even new information that I'd like to add. So if you have any suggestions, let me know how best to go about it.
Definitely Audible. I mean, yeah, everyone's on the podcast and the Audible. So yeah, we definitely need that book in circulation.
Yeah, and
Wherever-
and I do have to mention my 2 podcasts because that's a great way to get continuing education. One is called What Women Must Know, and it's basically all things health. That's why I had Chris on that program. And the other one is called The Love Code, and that's my spiritual show. So I have spiritual teachers and spiritual journeys and anything related to the awakening of ourselves. So yeah, those are 2 weekly podcasts I have. And if you go to if you go to my website or you go to Podbean, you can get any of those shows, any of those podcast platforms will have What Women Must Know or the Love Code.
Awesome. I love it. Do you have
I love
any?
that. Sounds really interesting. That it's kind of like what you're saying before, that one and that connection, that crossover. You can't really have one without the other, can you? Sorry, Chris.
Oh no, I was going to say what's coming to my mind. I've got a friend who's a female friend. She's older, about 70, and she's all over hormones. Like she's been doing hormone education, hormone health, and she said if there's any hormone issues going on, you've got to get on your roof with a megaphone and shout hormones. So you actually hormones. So you just warn anyone coming into the house. If there's any hormone. So we want to change that. We want both. It's about education for me, both men and women. It was very women centric, but men need to understand both themselves and their women and how women function. Like that is seriously what we've got to bring to the
Yeah,
table, right?
I really hope we'll have lots of men listening to this, or their women will get them to listen to it, because men find this a really fascinating topic because they don't have a clue what's going on. And it's fascinating. Men just get intrigued by this whole subject. And of course, they have greater understanding, whether it's for their partners or their daughters or granddaughters. Everyone needs this knowledge.
Because it's very dismissive a lot of the time, the cultural dismissiveness to women's hormones. What was the word? The hysteria. Because I use homeopathy, and you go back into the early books about women's hysteria. It's like, wow, even in homeopathy, which is meant to be non-judgmental, but that idea that these imbalances, which are actually out of most women's control because they don't understand, but they can come back in. It's not what it's meant to be, and it shouldn't be used as a shaming mechanism, as a dismissive mechanism to stupid women. It should be embraced. And if everyone does understand it, then well, as a society, we're just going to be so much more wholesome.
That's why we're all here.
Yeah.
We're all doing our part. At this time of awakening and transformation that has been predicted for ages.
Mm-hmm.
That we are the time and the returning of the feminine energy back onto the planet. But remember, it's not about Xena, the warrior. It's this spiritual nature of women that hold the power and the connection to the earth and to nature and to all of life. That's the power.
Yes.
Which will benefit everybody, as Ivy brings
Yeah.
to that
And it's
table.
not that often. I think that there's a misconception of women's power, and I know we've covered this, but what I like to think about it as, it's like women acting like abusive patriarchal roles. That's that misconception, and I think that's partly been conditioned, that to claim our power, that's what has to happen. But it just adds to that disjoint and that continued conflict, because we don't want that. No one around us wants that, and it's not feminine power.
I was going to say, Ivy, exactly, because that's not power.
No, it's abuse.
We abuse ourselves. So, that's what happened to me, working 70 hours a week, trying to make it in a male culture where that's what you do. You work hard, you build success, you make money, and that's what it's about. And it doesn't work for men, but it's devastating for women.
Yeah.
But I mean, what comes to mind was a doctor I recently interviewed who was an orthopedic surgeon specializing in spinal deformities. So you have to do a lot of work. You have to be very ambitious to get to that level of specialty. And he was, and he learned how to do all these interventions with putting rods in people's backs and fusing. And he thought this was the best thing going, and he would be working day and night and doing all these surgeries, and that was his life. He was passionate. And what was the rude awakening when he found out in a study that that was finally done, that only 22% of people who have these procedures have any relief of pain. So that started to put a crack in his world, and he also started to get anxiety attacks, and panic attacks started, and he had 12 years of dealing with progressively, with progressive anxiety attacks and pain. And in the end, he realized that everything about his world and his lifestyle and to me, how do you abuse your body all those years just to get to that level, and then working so hard, and everything started to crumble. And his body was totally falling apart. And he said he did 12 years of therapy. It never worked. And then he discovered how he needed to heal himself. And it began by someone suggesting you just write all your thoughts out on paper. You write them all out on paper, like a mindful approach. And then you crumple up that paper and throw it away every day. But you do it every day. And it alleviated his pain, which he could not resolve for 12 years, physical pain from all the abuse of his body. And it changed his life. And he now teaches how to heal pain without medications. And he's doing work with Bruce Lipton, and it's
wow.
but it has to take people to their knees to understand how they've been abusing their bodies. And it just ties in with, if you want to get your hormones back on track, you have to address areas where you've been abusing your body or yourself in some way, and make those changes and transformation, hopefully not with a lot of suffering.
And I guess for him, that realization that he'd been doing all of this with the thought that he's helping people, then to find out that he's not helped that many people, that would be a massive shock to the system.
It wasn't that he wasn't helping them, he was hurting them.
Yeah, which some of us know that already. But yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I got off on a tangent with that one, but he was these are the stories of how people wake up And the final message I think we really need to share is that you can heal endometriosis, you can heal PCOS, you can heal PMS, you can heal your hot flushes, and that's just the hormonal side of things. You can, all this stuff can be healed. The body can heal itself of anything,
Yes.
but you
I,
have to be willing.
I had endometriosis and PCOS, and it was homeopathy. And I didn't know how, I just dealt with all of my pain and everything. And I had to have an ultrasound for something else. And I just said, this was a couple of years ago, and I just said, can you just see what my cysts are doing? Because I had hundreds and hundreds on both ovaries. And he said, you've got no cysts. So there are none. And I was like, oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, that's so inspirational. I mean, so inspirational for everyone listening. Having such a chronic condition that is gone now because you made the commitment to be on this healing journey. And
Yes.
we have to say it's different for everyone. No one has the same journey, and you have to see what resonates for you. But you have to get on that journey.
Yeah, and there's so many ways to come to the same place. That's why I'm loving talking to everyone, is that there's always different avenues to come through, and that's what's beautiful, is that people can find what resonates with them and what works for them and what they feel is going to benefit them the most. But if you commit and you go with people who have already done this, then there is a way. There's always a way.
But we have to wake up and we have to understand, as my book says, Hormone Heresy. It's like I was very heretical when I was sharing this information because I was going against the programming and the narrative and the marketing. And for me, I was so angry at what I was discovering and how women were so tortured by literally by these treatments that, I was willing to stand up and be the voice at the time. So, I think we all need to do that, to stand up for ourselves and to wake up, to learn, to get educated, and to believe that we have the power to heal anything and transform our lives in whatever ways they need to be transformed. And the more you get yourself into balance, the more that journey unfolds, the faster you see those transformations happening. So, anything can be healed.
Absolutely.
But if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten.
Or you'll get worse.
More of the same or worse. That's right.
Get educated. Get Cheryl's book before it runs out, but I'm sure she's going to put it in another form soon.
Well, I invite people to contact me if they do need any assistance or they're interested in the Smart Women's Choice. Contact me. I've got a bunch of these products here, or the Hygiena. Yeah, please feel free. I'm very accessible and available.
Do you have much knowledge on sanitary items and the toxins in those?
Well, yeah, anything that's commercially made is probably made with dioxins, and anything you're going to insert into your body, you want to make sure it's organic and non-toxic in whatever ways. So absolutely. Absolutely. That's a whole other subject, but there's some great products in there, from menstrual cups to, organic pads and organic tampons. I'll always choose those. Oh, invest in the best, especially if it's going inside your body.
I saw something very recently, that there was graphene found inside liners.
Well, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, that one was a very big surprise. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Go organic. The easiest way is just do organic as much as you can, especially for all those sanitary products. Go organic. And there's cloth products, and there's organic. There's lots of organic options these days. I believe it's not so much the.
Yeah, I mean, even at the main supermarkets, you can buy your organic. You can even buy the underwear these days at Woolworths.
Well, there you go, progress.
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. Sometimes you think, that it's when I do remember that the purchaser does have power. Like you can get wooden cotton buds and, organic cotton buds and all these things that, going back 10 years were, crazy things you had to really hunt for, and you can go down the supermarket now and find them.
Times are changing. Times
In
are
some ways. In some ways.
Yeah, in some ways. Let's hopefully these conversations will expedite that process, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's true, there are infinite ways for you to get to the top of the mountain.
Yeah. And do you think that, some of the fear that goes on is also part of it is to continuously disrupt our hormones? I mean, now there's a control element to it, but that would just add to it, I'd imagine.
Well, fear, fear will definitely shut down the body. I mean, fear, anger, uncertainty. I mean, what do those emotions do? We know that they
Cortisol. I mean, it's what we learnt in FD, like the cortisol shunt. I mean, I don't know if that's still applicable. The progesterone cortisol shunt, like we said, it's like all your resources go into cortisol. Well, that means that if they go there, there's no resources to build anything else.
Yeah, so that's why you want to minimize, the fear porn, where whether it's on TV or, I mean, I don't watch TV anymore. You can watch any program you want online. You don't have to be there listening to anything that doesn't support you, or the commercials that are ridiculous and the shows that they're promoting that are ridiculous. You can choose what you want. The media that you listen to on the radio is basically propaganda, as we now know. So you want to watch the conversations. You don't want to participate in negative conversations about things. I mean, everything matters.
Yeah.
Everything matters. And that's why the more we just become conscious and aware, that it's going to impact the healing process. So if you want hormonal balance, then you have to understand it's a healing process in the body. Fear, anger, here's the deal. The more your liver is out of balance, the more the emotion associated with the liver is anger, right? So supporting the liver, cleaning it up, getting rid of the junk, the toxins, the sugar, the alcohol, will actually lower your anger.
Which then lowers your stress, which then helps everything work better. La 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 la.
So the more or for that matter, the more you go into meditation and the more you can observe these emotions and not react to them, the more it's going to support the organs to function, right? So there are many ways to get to it, but we have to begin somewhere, as we keep saying, and we have to begin the journey of healing. And that's a journey of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual transformation. I just keep coming back to that. That's what I learned, when all those issues that I had in my early 40s, the arthritis and the thyroid issue and the severe allergies and the adrenal exhaustion, all of that has been healed. So I'm at this stage of my life, and I don't have any of those issues. And so the sooner you start, the healthier you're going to be throughout your life.
And the more you're going to achieve in your life. Because imagine if you were all that in your 20s or your teens, or, the more fulfilling life you could have had as a younger person.
Yeah, I think the greatest success of this work is when I hear people say, I read your book when I was a teenager. I gave it to my teenage daughter, and they read part about the pill, and they decided they were never going to go on the pill in their life. And they have. I know women in their 40s who read that book when they were teenagers and told that influenced them, so they never went on the pill.
That's really powerful. That's huge, because in the work that Chris and I do, not that I'm seeing many people, but it's all with women. There's always an element of birth control that's led them to this point, and it's so common. So I was very lucky in that I just couldn't be on it, no longer than a month or two. And I tried at random times throughout my life, and I couldn't handle the moods. I'd get migraines. I didn't know who I was. It's just like, who am I? I'm not used to these mood swings, and had no control of them. So I was off them very, very quickly.
Your body was very wise to say, get this out of me.
Yeah, I'm always grateful to it. It's just, and I think that
I just want to share that it just brings one other thought up. So when I was 16, I think it was around 16, and I still wasn't menstruating. So my mother marched me off to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, we need to put her on the pill. Okay. To regulate menstrual cycles. So let me just say, a lot of women are put on the pill to regulate their menstrual cycles. Right? So let me just ask you this question. If you have an issue, first of all, how does putting yourself or your daughter or someone on the pill, for instance, made up of 2 known human carcinogens, progestins and estrogens, that deplete have 120 risks and side effects, deplete key vitamins and minerals, alter your microbiome, will ever support the body to get back into balance and heal?
It's just a mask, isn't it? It's just like, oh, look, we see what it's doing, therefore it must be fixed.
I mean, see the irony of that? It's like, you can never regulate a menstrual cycle that's out of balance with a toxic chemical that's just going to exacerbate the problem.
Also,
you can't do it. You can't force a child, as a teenager, to have regular menstrual cycles by putting on the pill, which shuts off your ovaries. Tell me how that works.
And then also, for me, it'd be like convenience factor, and then are the medical professionals that are seeing actually disclosing fully the information about these products? That's a big question mark to me, because it doesn't seem there's much disclosure going on with medical interventions these days.
Well, because women are at greater risk of blood clots, that question, these women, these young girls or women, whoever is going in, should be told that this is a risk associated, whether it's when you're flying, that you're at greater risk of blood clots, or in general, greater risk of blood clots is one of the side effects. But I have to say, that is never mentioned in any consultation you have with a doctor. You'll say, I want some birth control pills. They go, fine. What kind do you want?
What if to go undercover doctor, like recruit some younger people to go to the doctors and actually have a little cam on and go, see what and then pull them out. Anyway,
I can tell you what happened when I was young and went to go on the pill. I did get disclosed something, the breast cancer risk. So this lovely old doctor had to do a breast exam on me to make sure that I didn't have any lumps before I went on the pill. So there was some exposure.
Crazy. Oh, Jesus.
I question his motives, but
I would question his motives as well. But
even as a young girl, I'm like,
you didn't have a dicky bow tie on, did he? Sorry, Cheryl.
But there is that risk of breast cancer.
Yes, there is. But he didn't tell me any of the other stuff.
From the pill and from HRT. There was a study that came out in about 2001, I think it was. It was the Women's Health Initiative. Now, this was a U.S. government study. It was a huge study, and it was over a period of time. And they were going to do the study to see if HRT increased the risk of breast cancer. And the big announcement, I remember this because a friend woke me up at 4 a.m. I was lecturing in Perth at the time. And she goes, oh my God, did you hear this study? So they had stopped the study early because they found that women who were taking HRT were in fact at greater risk of were getting breast cancer. So that was a huge scandal, and for the whole industry. Oh my God, this Women's Health Initiative, they had to end it. Very rare does a study get stopped prematurely before its conclusion. And, women were panicking. What do you do? I can't be on my HRT. It's dangerous. And of course, they weren't really given a lot of other options, because you just don't go cold turkey off of your HRT. That's you have more symptoms from withdrawal. And I just saw relatively recently, they're reevaluating all the results of that Women's Health Initiative, and they're going, I never really said that. I never really said you're at greater risk of breast cancer. You're good. Go back
Wow.
All
We
good.
can see
But,
again. Try
but,
again. Maybe
but
it's
it's
different
like
this time.
it's like in, was it generally take, is it 25 years for research to filter down to clinical application? So it wouldn't really matter if it came out bad anyway. It's not filtering down to the MD's office, is it? Like they're not getting the PDF in the email saying, urgent, read this now, send it to you.
It's a challenge for the medical profession because menopause has been, or PMS, all the things that gynecologists, they're made into health conditions. They're made into conditions, diseases, whatever. And if you go to a traditional gynecologist, that's what I guarantee. Unless they're very exceptional, they're only going to be offering you the pill, HRT of some sort, the Mirena, or some level of pharmaceutical intervention. So that's just the way it is. And that's why if you really want to get well, you cannot go to a gynecologist to get you well. The only place a gynecologist may have in a woman's life is if she really needs some sort of medical intervention or surgical intervention, which even with fibroids, like you, Ivy, with your cysts, you cleared them up. People have fibroids. That's the number one reason for hysterectomy is fibroids.
Wow.
And like 80% of hysterectomies are not medically imperative. Think about that. 80%. And I think in the United States, they have something like 800,000 hysterectomies a year. I'm not sure what it is here, but 80% are not medically imperative, which means if you were to change your diet, if you were to even do other procedures, you wouldn't need surgery and if they go in and take your uterus out, they'll probably want to go in at the same time to take your ovaries out. And that actually is called castration.
And
So,
there goes your cycle.
But by the way, for no reason other than saying we are now reducing your risk of ever getting cervical ovarian cancer, which, by the way, the risk of getting ovarian cancer is about that much.
It's just heartbreaking to me because I love my cycle and my hormone. I feel, I'm so in tune to it. For me, it would be just like removing your womanhood, who you are, because if you still got your ovaries, you'll still have some type of cycle, wouldn't you?
Yeah. There's still, I've known many women, they went in to have because of fibroids, they got really big and they found out that their ovaries were taken as well. Not
without permission.
So, that's why so much harm has been done to the women because alternative healing modalities are not readily available in the medical world. So, surgery is, very, very profitable thing anyway, but has serious risks and side effects. When you do a hysterectomy, you're cutting nerves, you're cutting the blood supply, you're creating scar tissue. There are a lot of ramifications. It's not just a hop, skip, and
Take it all out. Yeah. I know. It just actually horrifies me, the thought of it. Like my whole body just goes, no. And it's almost have you heard the term birth rape? And it's a similar sort of thing. It's a very traumatic, going in and removing someone's womanhood is just, awful. And if you put it in that castration terms, you think, like, I assume men are going to have that visceral, like, because no man wants that happen to him because of his identity, what it feels like. Amount of times that men get upset over dogs getting it done because they can feel what that would be like. And yet we don't really give it a second thought for women.
That's where the testosterone's been made, right? Like, so it's like almost visceral. Like you take them away and my tea's going to go, I'm going to turn into something else.
Yeah.
You would never, that would never be offered to a man. It's like, well, you have prostate issues. We have a real good solution for that. Shock horror. But for a woman who, has an issue with the fibroids, which is the most common reason, as I said, for hysterectomies, not to say, hey, castor oil packs, let's do that. Let's, support your liver a bit more. We can we can resolve this. No, that's never, it's like, oh, well, we got to remove them. So women, as and let's just say, is these conversations, and as women get more aware, they'll realize they have a lot of options to heal their fibroids, but you have to do it before they get so large that it's beyond the ability to reverse, because then they start producing their own hormones. But even if you have interventions, you don't have to take your uterus out. There's myomectomies. You can just take the tumor out, the fibroid tumor, which, by the way, is not cancerous. Or you can, what's the procedure where they just cut off the blood supply as well? So there are options to deal with these things if the situation calls for it. But the last one should be taking out the organ, the uterus.
Yeah, I agree. And that's often sold as well to women with endometriosis, that the only solution is to just cut it all out. And for women in excruciating pain who have to go through this time and time again, it seems like an easy option, and I understand why they do it, but it is very saddening that they don't understand.
Well, here's the thing: if you do that, if you have all these adhesions going on and all this with endometriosis, and they take them out and they scrape them off, high probability they'll just have more grow back, because you're not dealing with the root cause. So just removing the presenting symptom doesn't heal the root cause.
No.
You're at risk of getting more of those, growths outside the uterus.
The same with your gallbladder. If you don't address the reason, they just take it out without even looking at why and clearing it. And there's so many options. I'm in a gallbladder group, and the amount of people who just save their gallbladder by discovering the right thing at the right time, it's quite profound.
That's why these conversations are so important, because I in my podcast I always like to say my tagline is empowering women with truthful information so they can make informed decisions. That's
I love that
line, right? You have to be curious. You have to have an open mind. You have to realize if you're not getting the outcome you want, if things aren't working for you with your health or whatever, then something has to change. Because if you keep doing the same thing, you're going to get the same thing. So these conversations are profound. It just opens up the possibility of more knowledge and more options and more awareness. And from there, hopefully you'll be able to, make better decisions.
Do you find that some people are looking for a really quick fix, and they're resistant to the work that it requires to bring a body into balance?
Ivy, everyone's looking for the quick fix. That's what keeps doctors in business.
Yes, it's the conditioning, the programming, isn't it? I just find it, as someone who's had to work things out myself, maybe because I was so sick at such a young age and I had a continuous journey, but I'm always surprised when people come to me and they want one remedy. I mean, in homeopathy, maybe back hundreds of years ago, you could do that. One remedy once and it will fix it. Or, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that, because how do I know what's working? That's what I hear a lot. And you're like, but it's all of it. There isn't this one.
And I'd be curious, what did you discover that created the cysts in your
What remedies was it?
No, what caused them? What
Oh, my history. I say I abused antibiotics. I was on antibiotics from a very young age because I lived in a swimming pool. I just was always in the swimming pool. I'd get ear infections, even though antibiotics don't, heal the ear infections. So I was on antibiotics for at least once a year, every year in my life, up until maybe about 13. I had a year off, and then I got a really bad ear infection because I was a competitive swimmer. Went back on antibiotics, and at the same time I got glandular fever. I didn't know. Everything fell apart. A lot of weight gain and all the rest of it. So it was a long journey for me. But the cysts discovery, I had very irregular periods, like one at 15, one at 17, maybe in my 20s. It was very irregular. So obviously the signs were there, but everything was normal, everything was fine. So it came probably after my second child, actually. And the pain was so excruciating, only for a very short amount of time before I took that, maybe a few months. The pain was so bad that I went and had an ultrasound, and then they discovered all the 100 things. And they're like, well, looking at symptoms and everything, they probably would have diagnosed me at a different time and investigated earlier. And then it progressed to most likely endometriosis. And I said, you're not sticking a camera up me at all. Let's just look at the symptoms and accept that's what it is. And then I went to see a homeopath and dealt with the symptoms, thinking that I never ever thought I'd actually get rid of the cysts. I just assumed they would always be there to some degree, and I was just managing the inflammation and everything. But no, they all disappeared.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, very inspirational. And as you're talking, it just reminds me of one other thing, that cysts and fibroids, even fibromyalgia, is often related to thyroid. The thyroid. So, and lack of iodine, or maybe like if you were in the pool with chlorine, blocks the uptake of iodine, but the thyroid is a major player with hormonal imbalance.
Yes. Yeah.
With fibroids and with cysts and, PMS. I mean, the thyroid is huge. It's a huge, huge, huge piece. And as Chris was saying, the adrenals are a major player in all hormonal imbalances, and the adrenals can affect the thyroid function as well if they're really out of balance.
Well, we were taught to go upstream the HPA axis and come back down the whole way through, and it all trickles down. And with such complex systems, it's everything affects everything, doesn't it?
And thyroid, I mean, thyroid's very ubiquitous in Australia amongst hypothyroid amongst younger women, I think, and mineral imbalance, and heavy metal toxicity, it all plays into that. Just the modern day, story which we need to test and address, which is what our background is FDN, so we don't guess, we test, we have a look at what's going on and balance things out that way.
Yeah, which is fantastic,
But our key is always the hormone. That's the core of what we learned. We look at the hormonal system. We balance that by balancing everything else. And then, you go out. But that's kind of like our marker, our measure, is if you can get the hormones in balance, then everything else has to be in balance, because it's kind of the most finely tuned area.
Yeah, well, that makes sense to me, so that's it. I mean, your hormones are reflecting all that's going on in your body. And I mean, that's why it's so, ridiculous to think if you just put someone on the pill, for instance, who has hormonal issues, that it's all going to make everything go away. It's like, no, everything that made it happen is still there, but now you've just added another layer of toxicity and stress and dysfunction to the body. So long-term, it may short-term help to alleviate the symptoms, but long-term it will create more harm. And that's fine who go on the pill. Let's say they have painful periods, they go on the pill, they go, as long as I'm on the pill, or if I have cystic acne, they go on the pill, everything is fine. And as soon as they stop it, it all comes back, because it didn't heal anything. It just masked it, but probably just added to a greater toxic load and dysfunction in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really not a solution to the problem at all.
What do you think the percentage of women are who are on hormones in Australia?
Oh, I don't know.
I'm always surprised. That's why I'm asking. Because I think a lot of people aren't, and then it shocks me. I'm like, oh gosh. I mean, you hear or even people that I see who are older and they spent, most of their.
But things that shock me is like, I remember one woman, and she was in her 50s, and I asked in the group, or I asked her, I can't remember. It's like, how do you menstruate? Are you menstruating? And she said, oh yeah, I'm menstruating every year. And she's been on the pills since she was in her 50s and since the 20s. And she said, yeah, I'm menstruating every year. And I went, oh my Lord. No, you haven't. You're not, no, you haven't been. And then I met, recently a woman who was 52 and she was still on the pill. Why are you on the pill in your 50s? First of all, it's birth control,
Yeah.
And I said, well, why are you on the pill? You're 52. Why are you on the pill? And by the way, the pill was never supposed to be given to women over the age of 35 because it increased the risk of blood clots and strokes. That's kind of gone down the wayside. And anyway, I asked this woman, why is she still taking the pill? She's 52 years old. And you know what her answer was? I don't know.
Wow.
Just
There's no questioning. Wow.
I never gave it a thought. And it's true for women who are HRT or the bioidentical hormones. They're put on it when they're experiencing symptoms. In their 50s, most likely. Another point I'd like to bring up in a minute. But and so they're put on bioidentical hormones. They're put on HRT, and it helps with whatever's symptoms, the hot flashes, whatever. But when are they ever told to get off it? So, I know women are put on their 50s and then they're in mid 70s and they're still on these hormones. It's like, well, you're a major guinea pig because what's going to happen to you? And, and they have lots of health issues, And then when they try to get off it because they now see that their estrogen levels are too high and they're at risk of breast cancer, they need help to regulate the body when you're 75, when you've been on these high levels of hormones for so many decades. There's no game plan offered to these women, no game plan to help them transition off of it, no game plan to get the body to be balanced so it doesn't need to stay on these forever. And then the other side of that story, there are women who are in their 40s who are going through what it's called perimenopause. I just call it poor health, to be honest. But it's another made up name.
Yeah. Not normal.
Like you have irregular periods. Yeah, if you're healthy, you would go through. You would arrive at menopause and have no symptoms, and then the definition is 12 complete months without a menstrual cycle. That's the definition of menopause. And if you're healthy and balanced, you would, not have a period for 12 months. And then you've completed this menopause stage and you're in your wise women years, right? But women who are complaining of hormonal imbalances in their 40s have a high level of estrogen and a low level of progesterone, because when you don't menstruate regularly, you're not producing progesterone, which you menstruate for the egg to release, to transform into an endocrine gland and produce progesterone. Well, if you are irregular in your menstrual cycles in your 40s, why? Because you're stressed or you're toxic or you're lacking sleep or whatever, you're totally out of balance, and you have high levels and low levels of progesterone, you're going to have symptoms of inflammation, of bloating, of, irregular cycles or, fibroids, whatever. And you go to the doctor and you're going, I'm having all these hormonal imbalances. And then what's the next thing they're going to do? They're going to give you a blood test. So the problem with blood test, and this was always a shocking piece of the puzzle, that the blood test is profoundly inaccurate because it isn't measuring the true presence of the hormones. It's only measuring the metabolites as they've already been processed and out. It's not an accurate picture. So a blood test will generally show that you're on the low side, which validates the diagnosis that you have, low hormones, and we need to put you on hormones to get your hormones up. So the testing is flawed, and you do testing. You probably work with some either urine or saliva testing to really see an accurate level of the hormone levels and the adrenal levels and all that. If you were to do that, and I have done both, I've had blood tests done, I've done saliva testing, and let me tell you, I had two different readings. One showed it was low, and the other showed that the progesterone was high and the estrogen was the estrogen was high and the progesterone was low. So you are misdiagnosed. The whole premise is misunderstood of why a 40-year-old woman is having these hormonal issues. The blood testing is a flawed test, with validates the flawed theory, and then they're put on the flawed treatment, which would be some sort of hormone replacement therapy for women in their 40s who are already dealing with high estrogen and low progesterone levels, driving the risk of, breast cancer, shall we say, even further, or depression or thyroid imbalances, which
Low libido. That's one thing that never gets talked about. Low libido. The irony of birth control is it affects the libido. So it's one way it works.
it affects the libido. So that's why, that's why we're having this conversation, to peel back all these layers of lies and misinformation so women make better choices. You can't make a good choice if you don't know what the heck's going on.
No. This is true.
Well,
and if you outsource, it's always that outsourcing that, looking for someone to save you. Whereas if you come and see people who, like yourself, who can guide, there's a lot of that. You have to take responsibility for your own health. You have to make those choices in the moment to get better. And that's not outsourcing. It's like a mentorship, really, isn't it?
So that's the message we're hammering in this conversation.
Yes. And in all of them.
In all of them. That's all of them. Start somewhere, just start by going for a walk around the block if you're a couch potato, or watch the sunrise, or take your shoes off and walk in your back garden or the beach or wherever you are for 10 minutes a day. Doesn't have to be much, but every little change you make is cumulative. Has huge consequences and benefits.
Absolutely. So we got any more questions, Chris?
No, I think it's been awesome. Yeah, I loved how you've gone into the historical aspects of these medications, and Coffee with Quacks is, we designed this because wanting to have people empowered and move themselves. But a big part of this is understanding that the medical establishment is not your friend, and it's actually designed in a perfect triumvirate. Like, for example, you're talking about between drugs and surgery, it's a perfect loop, and people's lives are destroyed through that. So we're bringing, it's our mission, to bring the very best of people who we know to the page, to this podcast.
Thank you. And thank you for doing that, because I think it's such a, a profound mission. And I think the one thing maybe, kind of completing the conversation is that for women listening, if you've had a hysterectomy, there are things you can do to address your body, your hormones. If you've had your ovaries removed, there are ways to support you. If you've had surgeries, ways to heal the scar tissue, which is a big problem for people. If you've been dealing with endometriosis, you've been dealing with ovarian cysts, fibroids, there are solutions. And if you've been surgically affected, or you've had these pharmaceutical interventions, there's always a way to support the body in having optimal functioning again, or certainly improve it from where it is.
Thank you. That's really important, because I think sometimes we forget that people can feel like they've done something and it's too late, and then there's regret, and that's obviously going to make people more unwell. So for people wanting to talk to you, women wanting to talk to you, go to your website. Is it a free half an hour?
It is a free half an hour, so they just have to email me.
Yeah.
And that's the way I'll communicate and get back and set up a time.
Starting point. Be a really good start, because you feel like being taken care of. Talking about Mother Earth, like you can just rest in your knowledge and feel that you're going to be taken care of, which is huge, especially for women. When we do that, all women tend to do that, and to have somebody else to rely on is really valuable.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm grateful for all the experiences I've had in this life's journey, because it has given me a lot of resources and a lot of understanding, and hopefully a bit of wisdom in there.
And it is always like, when you think about it, if I had a hormonal issue and I didn't know where to start, the last person I would want to talk to about it is a male gynecologist. Like, it's like birthing. Why would I ever want to talk to a man about how I'm going to birth my baby? Just so foreign to me.
And we have wonderful practitioners like you and Chris, and so many people out there. There are acupuncturists, and there's Ayurvedic doctors and homeopaths, and just so many talented people who have the ability with their modality to restore function of your body, to heal.
And the right motivation. You don't go into these more natural ways of healing without wanting to genuinely help people.
Right. Exactly. And having gone through your own healing crisis, there's, I find the holistic natural healing world is filled with people who are, the wounded warriors. They've gone through their healing crisis, and because of their healing crisis, they now have the compassion to really help others.
Yes. And they had to figure it out for themselves.
For sure. Yeah. That's a lot easier now than when I was searching. Fortunately, I had a wonderful integrative medical doctor who was really great and supported me, but I still had to do a lot of my own research.
Yeah. So you just held, and then you were able to. That's
and
wonderful.
By the way, when I started, I didn't have the internet to do searching.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Microfiche, libraries,
books.
But that would take a lot, because I can't imagine there was a lot of this information around, even in books.
Not as much as there is now, for sure. Yeah. But I couldn't just Google up anything I wanted.
I'm so grateful that I've come from that. I think I find it's easier to Google or to search for things, having come from, having to go to libraries and to understand where things come from.
I invested a lot of money in books.
Oh, we still do. We're going to be moving, and in my whole family, we're just, what do we take? We've all said books first. Books come up. So we're, allocating the space to send over of books. That's top priority.
We're very attached to our books. We may not ever look at them again, but we're attached to them.
I do. I refer to my books, because most of my books are, pretty much all my books are non-fiction. So it's that I never read them from start to finish, but it's constant reference.
There you go. Getting good use out of them. Yeah. For sure. Good investment.
Thank you, Sherrill. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and you're one of the first on here, and I think this is going to be really well received, because, look, it's just such a problem. Oh my God! And to bring women back to their power, that's what the earth needs. I mean, it needs women and men, but also unlock the secret. Right? The secret is this: get women unlock their power, and the whole thing changes.
And that connection back to source. I love that you brought that in, because that's such a big thing for me, and I think that people are starting to become aware of the role of the masculine and the feminine joining to connect to source. And it's something that the vision within us has further, pushed us from understanding who we truly are, and the power we have, and the changes we can make, and the difference we can make in reality once we are able to join it and connect.
Yeah, it's finding your true nature.
Yes.
The true feminine nature.
Yes.
And that was my journey, what that meant, to find my true feminine nature and not have to fight my way through life, and be in battle all the time.
Yeah.
That was profound. And, and like in your, before your period, the week or so before your period, or after you ovulate, for sure, that whole 2-week cycle is when you're more withdrawn, you're more within. Most women don't understand the energetic changes that happen. And I remember I get tired, and
Mm.
which is normal. And it's like you're going within, you're kind of nurturing an idea, a concept, or a new life, whatever. Anyway, I just remembered when I was feeling that way, I would have to ask my husband for permission if it's okay if I took a nap. I mean, that's, that's the programming, that it's not okay to just rest what you feel,
Wow.
right? And that, that was so interesting to observe that part of me. It's like, is it okay if I really want to take time and just to take a nap? Because I could never allow myself to do that. And the more I learned about these shifts of energies that happen through your cycle time, your wisdom, the more you allow that to happen, because
Yeah.
that's part of getting back into attunement with your true self.
Yes, that my thing is the rest is part of the work. Getting that to really sick people to understand that because if there's that switch, but you've got to keep working. If they can switch it to understand that rest is work, it's crucial work, and in fact, it's some of the most important work, because your body can't repair and heal when you can't rest.
And for a lot of women, that's like the taboo, right? You got to keep on going. So it was for me anyway. And that was part of this transformation when I was paying attention to the energies during my cycle and the luteal phase and follicular phase. What was happening? And going with it. So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. Thank you very much. And we'll let you know when it's out, and we'll have all your links and everything below, wherever it's on a few different platforms. This one may get flagged on the YT, but we'll just see where we go.
We'll set our intention that it will make it through.
Yeah, maybe it might not get flagged for another couple of years till we get huge.
But thank you both for putting the time and energy into having these conversations and having the depth of conversations, and to your commitment to this healing journey that you both are on. It's been an honor to be with both of you here.
Oh, it's been an honor to meet you and have you on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sherrill. I will see you soon, somewhere down the track.
You bet. Take care.
Awesome.
Have a
Lovely.
great day. Bye now.
See you soon.
You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Instagram, and TikTok by searching for Coffee